Hello again, my young friends. Professor William von Meilikson here again, and I am here today to teach you about some amazing creatures that live here in our world. Today, we're going to be focusing on creatures that fly high above our heads and that live here right in the state of Florida. I, of course, am talking about birds. There are many different types of birds here in Florida. It's too many to cover in one video, so I'm going to cover 5 right now. 5 birds that you probably have seen at some point in your backyard or just around here in Florida. The one we are going to talk about, of course, is the mockingbird. So the mockingbird is the state bird of Florida. It is the official bird of Florida, so anytime you see a mockingbird now, you'll know that this is the bird of the state that you live in. Now, mockingbirds are called mockingbirds because they like to mock or mimic or copy the sounds all around them. They copy the sounds of other birds, but they can copy even more things than that. They can copy the sound of, say, like a chainsaw, or a car, or an alarm going off, or a dog barking, and they just kind of move all of these sounds together in one big giant mix, and those are sort of the sounds that they make. So sometimes you'll hear just weird, sounds. That is a mockingbird. Now, number 2 is called a red-cockaded woodpecker. Now, I'm sure you're confused that what a cockade is actually a special ornament that you would put on your head, for your hat, to your bonnet, or something like that. And if you notice, it's got this little mark of red right here on the top of its head, so that's its cockade. So that's why it's called the red-cockaded woodpecker. Now, the most interesting thing about these particular woodpeckers are where they live. And I happen to have an example of it right here in my hands. So you see, red-cockaded woodpeckers, they prefer to live in pine trees. And we were lucky to find an example of one of the pine trees they like to live in. You see, they prefer pine trees, especially ones that are infected with a type of fungus called the red-hot fungus that makes the wood nice and soft. So, woodpeckers have to peck at wood. These trees can be so soft they can actually peck a giant hole right inside of the wood. That's how woodpecker made that. And then, as time goes on, they can peck a bigger and bigger hole. It sometimes takes up to 2 years to make the entire home. But they live their lives here, they have their little baby birds here, and this is where they live. So can you imagine building your house for 2 years using only your beak? And so that is what is the most amazing about those wonderful creatures. Next bird here today is going to be the barred owl. So not the barn owl, it sounds very similar, it is the barred owl. And that's because if you notice its feathers, it looks like there are bars going across it. So that is where it gets its name from. Now, barred owls have a very distinct sound. You probably know that an owl goes hoo, hoo. Well, a barred owl makes a sound that goes hoo, 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 hoo. It is often said that sounds like who cooks for you, hoo, 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 hoo. So if you ever hear that, that's a barred owl. Barred owls also are very, very unique amongst owls. You see, most owls have yellow eyes. They have big, bright yellow eyes, and if you look very closely at an owl, you'll see it's around them. A barred owl is unique because they have brown eyes. And just like most owls, they are able to see just as well in the dark and during the day, and they like to eat creatures such as insects or small mammals like mice and things of that. And number 4, we're going to go to the ibis, the white ibis, of course. So the white ibis, I'm sure you've seen these around. They're all over the place here in Florida. White ibises are unique for their very long beaks and their very long legs. So they use these 2 things to eat some of their favorite foods. So their favorite foods to eat are things like fish and crabs and snails and all sorts of lovely things you'll find inside of ponds and other parts of the world. So what they do is they can actually fish the fish out with these gigantic beaks of theirs. They can just stick it right inside of the ocean or the lake or pond or wherever they are, and they can pick those things out and they can eat them. Now, another interesting thing too is that they do like to eat insects, as a lot of birds do. And they're very, very good at eating insects and keeping those pests away from our gardens. Another very cool thing about them is that they really, really prefer to be in a large group. A large group of ibises can be called a congregation, a wedge, or a stand. A stand probably because they have such long legs they can walk through the water in, and that is why it is called a stand. There can actually be huge nesting grounds, the areas where they build nests high up in trees. There could be about 25 to 50 couples of ibises. So that's a lot of ibises, a lot of neighbors, all there at once. It's very, very interesting when you see them, because you can see them and you can see the baby ibises. Baby ibises actually stay a brown color for a very long time, usually around 4 to 5 years as they grow up, and then their white fellas grow in. And finally, of course, the Sandhill Crane. These are those gigantic birds you see roaming around Florida. You may have seen them in your backyard. Sometimes they even cross the road and you have to stop for them. They're just so big. They could be 3 to 5 feet tall. That is the size of a grown-up. They really, really love to eat bugs and snails and fish and a whole bunch of different creatures too. Just like a lot of the other birds we talked about today. They actually make a very loud caw sound, which is very, very distinguished, very, very loud, and you've probably heard it before. Sometimes you actually get to see them walking around with some of their little babies. They're very small, small and brown, and it's interesting because unlike most birds, their babies are actually ready to walk and move and eat when they're 8 hours old. 8 hours. Usually takes a couple of weeks for most baby birds to be able to do that. And then they stay with their parents for about 10 months, and then after that they go off on their own. A Sandhill Crane is also a protected species. That means here in Florida it is against the law for anyone to do anything to them. So that is how they are able to be protected, and how we can see them all around Florida here, and how they are able to walk across those streets, and how they're able to be in our backyards. So they are amazing, amazing, tall, huge birds. Alright everyone, well thank you so much for joining me today. My name again is Professor William von Meilikson. I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you enjoy the birds that live in your backyards here in Florida. I hope you all have a great day, and we'll see you soon.